If your intentions are right, if your intentions are for the people of Ōtara, then it will work out. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We'll just get up and keep going.
This podcast is proudly supported by the Ōtara Network Action Committee, Onac, community-owned, community-driven, and community-led.
Kia ora once again. This is Ōtara Podcast, your podcast, your history. Once again, sponsored by an amazing team. I don't know if you heard again, but Onac. So Onac is an amazing team of Otarians who've come together and basically want to show off their amazing superpowers to not only represent Ōtara, but to show that we've got a beautiful side in Ōtara. Yeah, we do, definitely. So if you see them around, say hello. And without further ado, I feel like there's a Marvel DC moment. Well, honestly, this is just beyond comprehension of my guest today. It's an amazing guest. She's I like to call her Captain America, but it's more of Captain Ōtara. So our amazing chairman of the Onac board, Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Annie.
Oh, you like that intro, right? Captain Ōtara, I reckon that's amazing.
I don't know. I'm trying to focus on you.
Oh, hey, fair enough. So first and foremost, like I always do with many of my guests is, what was your journey like from your humble beginnings, if you can introduce yourself?
Journey, humbling beginnings. Wow, okay. Well, my name is Jane.
Oui.
Jane Loto, to be more specific, really.
Oui. Yep.
Yes. I was brought up in Ōtara. So my family are from Ōtara. We've lived there for over 50 years in Ōtara. So just a bit about myself, and it's really important to speak about yourself. So my parents and my husband's parents migrated in the 1950s to the beautiful island of Samoa. Yeah. So they came on a boat. So they came to New Zealand to make a better future for themselves. Yeah.
Awesome.
A country for opportunities, and that's what New Zealand is, especially during that time. And at a time where New Zealand needed the labourers, to build the New Zealand economy. So Pacifica, New Zealand is where they are because their help and assistance with Pacifica.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really cool to know. And then my parents met here. They had a family, and I'm one of them. Yeah.
Oh, awesome! I mean, it sounds like every other story with every Otarian, they come from little boats of where the islands come from, and they come here to look for quote unquote milk and honey, and that was like my parents. I'll briefly explain my parents. My father, who came from the popular side of Apia, and my mother came from Savaii. Both came on boats. They were being sponsored by a church in Grey Lynn. And so the priest who had gotten news that these two people want to come from the islands came through, and they were sponsored. They met each other at church, and then they made their way to Ōtara. And then from then onwards, two siblings were born, and then we moved into a different house because we wanted better housing. And then the extra two came out, and then me came out.
All right.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The Pacifica, when they came to New Zealand, it was in Grey Lynn, the majority. Yeah. So there was a huge percentage that resided in Grey Lynn before they spread their wings and went out to other communities. See? Yeah.
Yeah. And you tend to hear stories like them migrating and our people moving into the southern side of Auckland with the promises of all the factory work. And this is from hearing not only from my own father's story, but from every other person that I come across and listen to them. And it's amazing. It's an amazing story that not only a mixed culture built an amazing town like Ōtara, but the people within it just, and their stories made it what it is. And it's awesome to hear everything from it. And I still haven't like unlocked all the stories from it. And it's an interesting fact from them. So, speaking of Ōtara, you work with an amazing team called Onac. If you can, explain what does, I know I explained in the beginning, but would you like to further explain what does Onac do? And yeah, in the perspective, if someone hasn't met you or met myself, or the team in Onac.
Onac is very unique. The awesome thing about Onac is that it's community-led, community-driven, and community-owned.
Yeah.
So it belongs to the people. We're not accountable to anybody else but our people of Ōtara. So what we do within Onac is for the voice of the people. So if there are any concerns or if they have any issues or just some awesome stories that they want to share with our community and share wider to the wider of Auckland, and then we will do our best, Onac will do our best to share that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people in Ōtara that are scared to voice anything or they don't know. And Onac is here to help, to guide them, to assist them in any way we can in getting their voice heard. So, yeah, that's pretty much Onac. So, yeah.
Because I remember coming into my first meeting with the Onac group, and I was nervous because it was my first time going to an Onac meeting, and just hearing everyone, oh, that's fine. Just hearing everyone's contribution to what they do. You hear like a group from Ōtara Health, or it was amazing that you got someone from the police, from New Zealand police, who's often, it's quite hard to get to speak. Knowing this because I used to work with MIT's council, and we normally try and get police officers to come in to talk, to do speeches and whatnot, and it's quite difficult because they're very busy. So to see that level of respect between the two was awesome. So, with that said, is there any particular projects that Onac is going through for the community currently that you're doing at the moment?
Well, probably just back to your kore you just said. Onac has a history. Onac has a 35-year history. So it doesn't start with me. It doesn't start with our awesome team at the moment. It started 35 years ago, where Onac was first founded, and they were founded by kaumatuas and kuyas, community leaders, church leaders, Pacifica community. That's where it started. So, we're just blessed to be able to continue the walk that they did. So it's about action. So, yeah. And so in saying, when you were saying that you had police, that we've got a guest police coming in, well, that all started back over 35 years ago, where the community came together collectively and raised an issue that was affecting our community, the heart of our community, especially Pacifica community. And so since then, we've been working together with one another in the best way we can. And that's where Onac has been recognised as from the beginning. So since that, because our people of Ōtara are not scared to stand up for themselves, are not scared to voice what we think as a community should be done within our community, then that's where the respect comes from other agencies or other providers. And because we're not governed by anybody but the community, that's what makes us special.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So with that said, when you stepped into the role as important as chairperson, what were your thoughts when you went into that position? Those are big shoes to fill in, especially the role as chairperson.
Yeah, it was big shoes, and I was really scared. For a long time, the chairperson previous kept telling me, it's time for you to step up. because he was, he'd been chair for a while, but I kept saying no, because I'm so afraid. I was so afraid that to fill in big shoes of those awesome leaders in the past, that I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to let our people down. I didn't want to fail them. I was so scared that if I said something or did something that wasn't pleasing to them, that I had let them down. But then as I grew, I knew that the talents and gifts that I have, that I could put my energy and my heart and my passion into supporting or helping the people of where I stay and where my family stay. And that's the thriving and beautiful community of Ōtara. So there's nothing I would change about Ōtara. Ōtara is an awesome place to stay in. Since I was little, you could go outside and play. You can go outside and play on the street until it was dark. You will play go home, stay home. You will play hide and go seek, and it could be really late at night. You can go to your next door neighbour or the street down the road and walk into their house and go into their fridge, have a feed, and it was vice versa. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was family. We used to also go down the creek and go for a dip. That you wouldn't do that now. But, you go for a dip because it was hot and you would know everyone around you. Everybody knew everybody. So, yeah, it was such a safe place to live in. It still is. It still is a safe place to live in. It's how you look at it. So, yeah.
Awesome. I like how you mentioned perspective of how you see it, and yeah, it's definitely on perspective. And I was going to lead up with the next question is what you sort of answered it. I wanted to elaborate more. Is what your perspective about Ōtara from when you were growing up to now? What sort of things that you've seen so far that has grown from when you were little to now?
What's growing? Wow, people. So there are a lot more people in Ōtara than there were 30 years ago or, 10 years ago. I wouldn't change anything about Ōtara, but what I would ask of other providers or government is support, is that our people need support. We have many, many families in our community that are very successful. They're successful business people, and they academically are very successful. They've got PhDs, they're well educated, the doctors. We've got some really awesome sports superstars that have come out of Ōtara, even musicians. We've got so much talent that have come out of Ōtara in the past, present, and in the future. So why don't we invest in that, bringing up our people to know that they're good enough, and the only way that we can do that is that invest in our community by investing in our providers, our smaller providers, our churches, where they're able to support our families, talk to them, because it's very hard. In Ōtara, if you can't talk to our people the way that they would understand, then it'll be pretty hard to actually get through to them. Yeah. So utilise who you really have in our community that can help our families. We have a lot of vulnerable families that need that extra hand and that extra help.
Definitely. It goes back to our first episode of the podcast. We were talking to Sully. He was mentioning about just letting us have the resources that you have, and what I mean by that is that he was talking about the funding that normally that either has been given to other organization by the government. Why don't you give it to the people who know or understand what's going on in Ōtara, and let them run what they need to run. But then it comes back to the next question, which is how would you run something like that? Because we often like going back to what Sally said, we tend to talk quite a bit, but the action's not being done. So going forward, how do we as someone who's going into this sort of nature, how do we go forward in making that action work for us?
Well, Sully is a perfect example of a leader.
Yeah.
He's been in our community for so long. He's done so much, and he's all about action. Sully is not much of a person by mouth, but he's action.
Yeah.
So he's absolutely right. And when we talk about funding coming into our community, it's hard because you don't really see it, and what is the outcome of the funding that has been poured in our community. If you pour resources and funding into our communities, the smaller providers that are within our community, invest in them, because they're the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that are working with our families every day. And they're the ones that are hearing the cries, hearing the hurts, hearing the good stories. Invest in that. And if they need support in upskilling, do that. If they need resources to know how to help our families, why don't we do that?
Exactly. Again, I always like to go back to Sully because he is a man of few words and more action. And just hearing him like that, just explaining everything to me, it's pretty clear. And you verifying it like that, and confirming it. So, with that said, if you were to per se have that sort of resources, where do you think it needs to be? Because I heard from Sully's perspective, it needs to go into education, but in the terms of education, whereas education provided by us, because we know who we are, and the kids, and you're talking to kids who's going to school, they don't really understand. So if you were given resources, where would you think it needs to go to for Ōtara to strive? Pretty much.
Sully's absolutely right. Education. Growing up, we didn't have a lot, and so since our parents migrated from the islands, all they said to us when we went to school, go to school, la onga mo la onga. Go to school first, get a good education. They would always say that. And when we didn't do too good at school, when it came to parent interview and we were naughty in class, we would get it at home.
Yeah.
We would get that hiding. But that was the only way our parents knew how to discipline us, because they loved us, because they knew how important education is. So yes, Sully's absolutely right. Education. Help us educate our own children. There are a lot of resources the schools have, but they can do a lot more. And it's the schools that need that support to help our children. And if we can educate our children through our providers, the extra support to take that pressure off our schools, that would be wonderful.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because I understand that, because I grew up from that schooling. I was lost in that fold. I didn't understand most of the things that were from school. You tend to feel like you're outside, and when you're in school, you either, and this is me from learning from when I'm older now, is that when you're at school, you tend to try your very best, but you're not doing the best for you. You're doing it for someone else's. You're doing it because one day you'll get a good job, or one day you'll get the higher education to get out, but not realizing that you can do enough for you to be as happy as you need to be. And I think there's a lot of pressure in our kids today who are they have that image of them being successful, but not realizing that it is achievable but they always seem to short grabbing it.
You're absolutely right. Everything's achievable. And if we help our kids understand that everything is achievable, then they can do it. There's so much potential in our kids. And we know that because, well, growing up, I saw a lot of racism with my parents. I didn't know what it was back then. I didn't know what it meant when we walked into the shop and my parents weren't served, especially my mother, or they told her to wait outside. And I thought that was normal. I just thought, oh, okay, but I knew in my heart that that wasn't. And so teaching our kids in education is so important. They've got to know their rights. They've got to know what they can do. And if we don't allow them to reach their dreams or their goals, achieve their goals, they wouldn't know. Then we'll just fall short in everything that they do. And so they won't. And then they'll be lazy-minded.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always believe that it will hit the next generation.
Definitely.
My father always believed in hard work, and honest hard work too. And every time when I always mention my father, because I love my father deeply, rest his soul, he always wanted the best for me. And I guess his wisdom has passed on to me, where it's not I don't have like much siblings or whatnot now because they're older. But I want to see the best of Ōtara. I want everyone's wisdom to be passed upon, because like a community or a village, we keep each other safe and all our knowledge is spread together. So
No, you're right. And it's having a good heart.
yeah,
And if your intentions are right, if your intentions are for the people of Ōtara, then it will work out. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We'll just get up and keep going. Yeah. And if you've got a good team behind you, like I do, I've got an awesome trustees and the support. If you don't have that support, then it'll be harder for you to run with it. So I'm very blessed.
absolutely. I feel like we're running with a team of 100,000 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, with all good teams come with good leaders. And I do believe, Jane, that you're a very good leader.
Thank you, Vinny.
With that said, all good leaders have amazing quotes, and they always have a positive message. So what is your positive message out there for all Otarians to hear?
Wow, I don't have a quote, but the message I probably will share is to love God with all your heart, all your mind,
Beautiful.
and all your soul. Be good to your parents, work hard, and have a good heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
From where I'm sitting, I see a 10K gold of heart from you. And I hope Ōtara sees it more often than anything, honestly. You're a beautiful soul. Keep being beautiful.
Thank you, Vinny.
No worries. Again, thank you so much, Jane Loto. There you go. I see your last name as well.
Thank you.
And thank you once again for coming into this amazing show. And thank you once again, audience. Hope to see you again in the podcast.
Can I just say something?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're...
Thank you. Thank you for the podcast. This is really important that we get. This is how we can say, share our stories, is through the podcast, because our kids are all social media, and that's what the future is. So in order for us to continue our stories and tell our stories to our children is something exactly like this. And I do want to acknowledge Will.
Hey.
Yeah. So he's behind the scenes, but he's awesome.
I'm just saying, you're going to get paid for double for this, I'm telling you.
So yeah, having something like this is what we need, is what our future needs, because they can just rewind, and then just look at it and go, that was my mum, or that was my nana, or that was my papa, and, and they can see it.
Yeah. And hopefully they'll add the title, That's My Hero. But like I said again, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie.
Always as humbling, as awesome as you are. And once again, thank you so much, viewers. I'll see you again in the next episode. Bye.